This is Majjhima Nikaya 44, the shorter classification. So at one time the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha in the bamboo grove. Then the layman, Visakha, went to the nun, Dhammadina, bowed, sat down to one side and said to her, "Noble lady, they speak of a thing called identity." And that identity is, the Pali word is Sakkaya. So some people will translate that as person,
personality,
or embodiment. Abhihona. Ananda Jyoti was translating as embodiment as well. So, noble lady, they speak of this thing called identity. What is this identity that the Buddha spoke of? The Sakkaya. Visakha, the Buddha said that these 5 assumed aggregates are Sakkaya. That is form, feeling, perception, sankharas, determinations, and consciousness. Saying a good Visakha approved and agreed with Dhammadina, then he asked another question. They speak of this thing called the origin of identity. What is the origin of identity? It's the craving that leads to future rebirth, mixed up with relishing delight and lust, taking pleasure in various different realms. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, craving for non-being. And the Buddha said that is the origin of Sakkaya, identity, or what we call the person. So what would you say? How would you explain identity? What is this identity? What am I? What is myself? What is identity?
Well, whatever you regard yourself to be, however vaguely. So any notion of I am as an individual, pretty much, that's already what you take identity to be for you. So the personality. So it is a general term. It's not a specific personality. It's just the fact that personality is there. Personality of a subject. So there is no sense of identity without a sense of I'm a subject. And in other words, there is then no sense of identity without a separation between you and the objects of your world. But all of that is not the problem, that's the result of the problem. Problem of craving towards the 5 aggregates.
That's where it comes about, the arising.
Yes, that's what it says, the origin of personality. So the origin of personality was not, or rather is not contained solely in the past. The origin of personality is the fact that craving is still there. Was there, will be there. For as long as craving is there, personality is maintained. And craving is the most immediately manifested through sense of ownership. Say, like when pleasant feeling arises, if you are not assuming it to be for me, mine, pertaining to me, affecting me, you wouldn't be craving for more of it. When the unpleasant feeling arises, again, against me, mine, that I don't want it to be, and all these other kind of permutations, that's why you end up craving for it to not be, because you feel entitled to do so to speak. You feel it's your right to do so. It's your right to defend yourself against these feelings, and it's your right to prolong the other feelings that you want. So through that craving, you maintain your sense of ownership. Gratuitous, like things present themselves as towards you, and you assume that you are because, look, these things have arisen for me. So that's exactly how you end up maintaining the notion of identity, of I am such and such. Any notions of personality that you have, are the symptoms of your underlying ownership of things, of your feelings, of your perceptions, of your intentions. So if you want to undo the personality, you undo the ownership. But you can't undo the ownership as a matter of choice. You can't decide to not own things because you own that. You will own your renunciation of things. So that's when people think that all they need to do is throw away their possessions and they'll be free from attachments. No, attachments were never in the possessions. Ownership is not in the things, it's not in the aggregates. So the assumption of ownership is basically in regard to the aggregates, but it's not in them, and it cannot be found anywhere else apart from it, as the Buddha described, upadana. So you don't want to be trying to get rid of the personality. You want to be trying to uproot the ownership of it. Because even the notion of personality is regarded as mind.
Because even if you don't have, you don't take the personality personal, or you don't own the personality, there is still, even the Buddha is still a...
Yeah, there's a different Pali word for that, pugala.
Yeah.
There's the individual underneath there.
There's still an individual.
So you can have an individual without personality, but you can't have personality without an individual. So individual is basically a person freed from personality. That's why pugala is used to describe arahants as well, and noble disciples. And literally means an individual. And basically individual is what is left when personality has been freed from ownership.
And what is then left as an individual? What is there? What is...
Absence of ownership.
Absolute. But what is still there is the aggregates.
Yes, but those aggregates are not the aggregates that Puthujjana can relate to, for as long as he's a Puthujjana. So you can't say that it's the same aggregates that Puthujjana owns, and then it's those aggregates that are left for an Arahant. That's true in theory, but practically nobody can have an impartial view on Puthujjana and Arahant spectrum. You have to be pertaining to some of it. So you are either a Puthujjana or you're close to being Arahant. In which case, when you speak about the five aggregates, it's going to be accurate what you refer to. But that should not then be used the same to describe Puthujjana's five aggregates. Because they're not the same. That's why it said, from Puthujjana's point of view, basically, the five aggregates cease for an Arahant. Cessation of form, cessation of consciousness, as the Buddha described it. Because it's utter cessation of the aggregates that Puthujjana knows of.
My aggregates.
Exactly. Those are the only aggregates he has. Aggregates that exist through the sense of mind.
The assumed aggregates and unassumed aggregates.
Yeah, exactly.
But you only know assumed aggregates.
Yeah, you can't see them like shoulder to shoulder and compare them and then sort of pick and choose or contemplate them rightly. You have to be affected by them.
So by seeing that you're affected by them, how do you...
Well, you know you're affected by them because you're liable to suffering. Your personality is your burden. Not just the image of yourself that you have in others, but also just in general. Things that can come your way, things that you don't want. Things that can go away from you that you want to keep. All these things are kind of relationships of your personality. And they're all symptoms of the underlying problem, which is kind of overall, the most general symptom of that problem is suffering. You're liable to suffering. So if you're freeing yourself from suffering, you will be freeing yourself from personality and all these other symptoms as well, because you're freeing yourself from the underlying cause of it. Underlying cause being craving. So first you need to recognize the problem. The problem is not that your personality is like this or like that. The problem is that personality and liability to suffering go hand in hand. It's just two aspects of the same underlying cause, two different symptoms. So once you recognize that that's the problem, you'll stop blaming personality to be the problem. And then try to engage in like psychotherapy or whatever, try to rewrite your psychological patterns and one. That's all management. It's all just trying to retailor the symptoms the way you think they should be. It's still a symptom of something else. Something else, as the sutta says, being the craving. So it's not about denying the personality or trying to get rid of it. It's about seeing it as a symptom of an underlying cause and using it then to discern the underlying cause. Because with fading away of your ownership of your personality, as in with fading away of those symptoms, you know then the underlying cause of the craving has been diminished. But you'll never be able to see that way for as long as your practice is about denying your personality, denying the sense of self, and just arguing the point, oh, there is no self. The Buddha said there is no self. Look, everything is changing, there is no self.
There's also, you might not like yourself because you're angry,
Yeah.
you're lustful,
Yeah.
you've got these bad habits.
Yeah.
So you want to change those habits, but you don't want to change yourself.
Well, as I said, you don't want to be aiming your efforts at changing that sense of self, because that's a symptom. You want to be aiming your efforts at restraining the outpours of that sense of self, which are kind of aggravating the underlying cause. That's then amplifying your sense of self, as in increasing your conceit, increasing your self-centeredness, increasing your selfishness, increasing your hate, all these things. And those things are maintained and proliferated through your actions, through choices you make. And the fact that it's rooted in choices means it's on you to choose, not to decide beforehand. So whenever there is a choice for wholesome or unwholesome, you choose wholesome, you don't choose unwholesome. That is your effort. You don't welcome unwholesome, you don't entertain it, you don't engage with it. And that's how you basically prohibit craving to spread. With craving diminishing, sense of self is diminishing. Your conceit is diminishing. Indirectly. You can't say to this extent I'm less conceited. You can only know that in hindsight.
When you start choosing what you haven't been choosing, when you start choosing wholesome instead of unwholesome.
When you start choosing sense restraint instead of sensuality.
That's not pleasant.
No, of course, no.
Initially, because that is who you are.
Yeah.
So to speak.
Sure. Yeah, you're going to have like complete identity crisis, in the sense of you lose all your confidence that you had in the world that you known, because the world you knew was the world of sensuality, of sensual manipulations, acquirings and protections, and the way you go about it, and they will all have to be undone because you're now withdrawing from that whole domain of sensual being. So that's when anxiety can come in and doubt and stuff. But again, all those things are another phenomena arisen. In the same sense, your personality is phenomena arisen. So you use those things as symptoms that, okay, I am actually delving in the right direction. Because if I were not feeling anxious about undoing my sense of identity, my belongings, means I'm not clearly dealing with the underlying cause of those things. But the fact that I am feeling anxious, the fact that I am feeling doubtful, means I am actually at least going in the right direction. How long I have to do it, I don't know. That's where the faith comes in. But it's more of a faith in finding the cure, not in faith of some magical release. So many similes in the suttas, but obviously the most obvious one is the physician gives you the medicine that's unpleasant to take. But out of the faith in physician and out of certain discernment of your own symptoms, you get to see the symptoms are diminishing. And you keep taking the bitter medicine or the painful medicine, the restraint and so on, but the symptoms are diminishing. And then actually, not just that you will not mind the unpleasant medicine, you will look forward to it. Because once it heals you, you won't need any of it.
It can be painful.
Exactly.
Death.
It's not always painful, but when it is, you don't make a problem out of it. Like sense restraint is painful only when sense desire is there. So it's painful because of the sense desire, not because of the restraint. If sense desire is not there, you not engaging with sense objects is not painful, because you don't want to engage with it. So the discrepancy that was causing the pain is gone. So the question is just not to not give in to the pain and act out of it, as in try to get rid of it by giving into sensuality. So all these things would be rounding up your sense of your Sakkaya, your personality view, that you are an independent person, independent of this experience, independent of the choices you make. You're an entity that exists on its own. You will see that that's not the case. Because if you are an entity that exists on its own, why do you feel anxiety? If there are things that are doubtful or threatening to you, you would be fully enclosed within yourself, impermeable to anything external, yet you're fully affected emotionally right from your core. But see, people who are not restrained and don't practice mindfulness, despite all the kind of evidence of anxiety, non-control, suffering, they still think they're an entity fully in charge of themselves, independent of the whole world and everything that happens to them.
Yeah, independent, not permeated by the world.
Yeah. Like that's like Sakkaya Ditthi, basically the whole like personality view. The view that there is this personality of me, I am, whatever there might be. It's obviously not even, cannot be specific. Oh, I'm such and such. That's, you decide that upon your sense of personality. So that sense of personality is a view that this sense of me is completely independent of everything else. That's why Sakkaya and Attavada, it's just hand in hand. It's the same thing, pretty much. But once you start practicing sense restraint, start sort of digging up these mistaken foundations of your Sakkaya, you will see that your Sakkaya cannot be independent from the world you experience, from the five aggregates.
Mm-hmm.
And you will stop maintaining such personality view. And that's when person develops the right view, basically.
Because that right view doesn't fit in with the wrong view.
Exactly, it's mutually exclusive. Yeah.
So this is from the Bhikkhuni Samyutta 10. I don't know the exact number. And here we have Mara, the evil one, speaking to a nun, the nun Vajira. So Mara says to her, "By whom is this creature formed? Who is the creature's maker? Who is the arisen creature? Who is the creature that ceases?" And Vajira the nun says, "Why do you refer to the creature, Mara? Are you involved in wrong view? This is a pile of pure determinations. There is here no creature to be found. Just as for an assemblage of parts there is the term a chariot, so when there are the aggregates, convention says a creature." Or but it's the Pali term is satta, but
it's the creature. The Pali term satta is closer to Pali term pugala. Then it's closer to Sakkaya. So it's closer to the individual rather than the person. So individual that's appropriate as mind is what person is. Creature that's appropriate as mind is where the question comes of who is the owner of it?
Of this person.
Exactly.
This person.
So like the Mara there said, that's what she says, are you involved in the wrong view? Is because the fact that he asks who is the owner of the individual means that he puts the personality view first and then individual second. And that's exactly the trait of the wrong view. You think things are yours because you are, but it's the other way around. You are because you keep taking things to be yours. So that's what I mean. You can be an individual without being a person, but you can't be a person without being an individual. So you can have a sense of self. You can't have a sense of self without taking things as mind. But you can be taking things as mind without going to the extent of the sense of self. That's like the subtler conceits for Arya Savaka to abandon later on in the practice. So, but the appropriation comes first. Sense of self is the symptom of it. It's the result of it. But Mara asks, who is the owner of appropriation? Which means he puts the sense of self first, again.
Yeah.
And the fact that she says the creature is only a pile of determinations means pile of choices. The creature is pile of choices. Now, wrong choices result in that creature having a self-view and thinking that its own self is independent of his own choices of ownership. Thus, things are mine because I am. But if the choices were right of that creature, if choices were not choices based on the craving, he will undo that view that he's independent of his own choices. And then he'll see it's just choices arising, choices ceasing. Determinations manifesting, determinations disappearing. So who are you talking about? So the assemblage of the parts of the chariot is real as such. It's not about denying the assemblage, saying the creature doesn't exist because it's made of parts, which is how the wrong view takes it, and certainly modern interpretations. No, the creature is the name of the parts. There's no need to deny the creature and say chariot is not real because it's made out of components. How would you even know what those components are of if you don't have the unifying identity of it as a chariot? Same, if there is no unifying identity of an individual, i.e. the five aggregates, how can you know the five aggregates are part of the individual? You couldn't. But people hope, whereby if you sort of, they hope that you'll be able to escape the ownership of the creature by denying its existence through saying that it's made of parts, thus it's not real. Parts are real. Like, how can parts not be real while you're talking about? What I'm referring to is, I think it's based on that verse, that the whole the questions of the King Milinda and the monk Nagasena, when he tried to basically argue that there is no self because it's made out of parts. He said personality, Sakkaya, is made out of parts, that's why it's not real. It is real. And she says that it's real. She says convention calls it creature. That is the name of this particular assemblage of parts, which is you as a human being. And that's not the problem. The problem is you implying ownership, maintaining ownership that then implies the self-view, as in view independent of the assemblage of the parts. But even such mistaken view is real as a mistake. Because if you keep going, if you go around denying the mistake from being there, how can you resolve it? No, there is no mistake. Mistake is not real. What is there for you then to resolve? But there is a mistake, because there is suffering. Yeah. I mean, there is a self of you which is a mistake. So you must acknowledge it first. And that acknowledgement is the recognition of the wrong view, which is what she asked Mara. Based on his question, implied, like clearly reveals that he puts that sense of identity first as the owner of the creature. Who is this creature formed by? As in, there is the entity independent of this creature. Creature is second to the entity. But the right view realizes that it isn't. It's the first. Creature is the basis for your sense of entity, for your identity. Creature is the basis for the personality view. How? That's what Buddha said in the previous sutta. It's through craving. Through craving in regard to things that creature has access to, basically. Through craving in regard to the five aggregates, through craving in regard to the feelings of the creature, you get to develop the notion that you as an identity is independent of this creature. I'm so much more than this body. I'm so much more than this mind. How can you know that except on the basis of your body and mind? So that's what I meant before when we said you keep assuming it as outside of the creature as opposed to contained within the creature.
Because that self-view that is independent, it's
not.
That self-view, that wrong self-view, is infinite, in a sense.
Eternal. Yeah.
So big.
That's why sense of being eternal and self-view go hand in hand. You can't have a self-view without the implicit notion of it will last forever, eternally. Because any notion of lasting and cessation is on the level of the creature and the aggregates and the feelings, but you assume yourself to be independent of that, thus you automatically assume yourself to be eternal. So you seeing the notion of eternity is within the creature, is you basically removing the basis for that gratuitous mistake that you keep maintaining. Mistake of I am independent of the experience as a whole. I am independent of these five aggregates.
I'm within that
You are
view
fully
is-
within because you cannot occur anywhere else except on that basis, which means you're second to it. That's already the reduction of Attavada. Attavada is assuming that external sense of self independent of the five aggregates as a whole. Once you are become unable to assume that anymore, and you will become so if you keep rectifying your own basically mistake of assuming it to be separate. So you assume to be separate, you don't deny it. That is your starting point. But you now include the assumption of separation within the basis of the presently enduring experience as a whole. So you will rectify the mistake, not by denying it or trying to get rid of it, but by seeing the bigger picture that includes it. Bigger picture being, doesn't matter how much you conceive yourself to be independent, any notion of independence, any notion of self is within the presently enduring experience for which you had no say in whatsoever. And you keep practicing that kind of contemplation, that kind of mental training and drilling of whenever there is a sense of self, whenever there is a sense of I am, it's not about, oh, I'm not real. I am real, but I am within this. This is not within I am. And that's like the Arya Savaka's practice of not I am, not for me. Not like I am not this and this is not for me, how they usually translate it. It's actually not is the first, I am is the second.
Not being within.
Yeah, so I am is within not. Mine is within not. Self is within not. And that's how you stop owning it. And that's how your personality will just become an individual. That's why an arahant cannot be distinguished by a Puthujjana, because all he sees is personalities. He can't see an individual through the personality, because for him individual is personality. So when arahant speaks, talks, decides, tells him off, shouts, he'd think, oh, he's an angry monk or whatever. He's a Puthujjana, as there were cases in the suttas. And then we said, no, he's completely enlightened. So you can't tell it externally apart, because he still has choices, preferences. Oh no, I don't want that, I want this, because that was never the problem. The problem was he maintaining the assumption of basically an entity separate from all of that.
The verse continues a little bit. Let's go back a bit. Just as an assemblage of parts, there is the term chariot, so when there are aggregates, convention says a creature.
Yeah, so aggregates are called a creature.
Yeah. The assemblage.
Yeah.
Of
So it
parts.
doesn't matter if it's 1 part, 5 parts, 15 parts, the name of the parts is the creature. The name of the parts of the vehicle is chariot.
But then she continues, it says, it is merely suffering that comes into being, suffering that stands and disappears. Nothing apart from suffering comes into being, nothing other than suffering ceases. So she's seen the mistaken.
She's seen the mistaken, and what's left now, it's basically just seeing, like, when I said just earlier on, discrepancy of that ownership means suffering. So once you have undone the extent of that discrepancy, as in you don't assume anymore that you are an entity independent of your experience as a whole, independent of anything you can see, perceive, feel and intend, you realize such thing is inconceivable. So your sense of self is within those things that are not in your control. Thus, your sense of self starts to fade as the master owner of the experience, which means discrepancy begins to lessen. The discrepancy of owning the unownable. But for as long as there are traces of discrepancy, that's all. The only way that's manifested is through suffering. So whenever there is suffering, means to that extent there is discrepancy of craving.
So a person who would say it is merely suffering that comes.
Well, it means it's an Arya Savaka.
An Arya Savaka,
Yeah.
but she's not.
She's not an Arahant yet.
But she's not really touched by suffering.
Well, yeah, she might be like almost
it's
close to an Arahant or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. But the reason why she said that is because that's actually, as I said before, that's what's in common. Even to a completely unenlightened Puthujjana and somebody who is on the way to enlightenment is suffering. and trying to overcome it. Putujana tries to overcome his unpleasant displeasure by going for sensuality, by acting out of ill will. All that is rooted in you feeling the pain, which means you don't want to feel the pain. So suffering arises, suffering basically ceases. And everything else you do is on account of that, literally. And it's same for Arya Savaka. But now he knows that, so he doesn't go about it in a wrong way that will make that suffering worse. Way of sensuality, ill will, distraction, carelessness, wrong speech, and so on. So he realized that these things, doesn't matter whether I was Putujana or practicing for Arahantship, it's all rooted in the same reason. You don't want to suffer. So if that's the goal of Putujana, then you realize that your actions are causing a massive contradiction, because it's because of your actions you keep suffering even more. But the only reason you act is because you don't want to suffer. So that's what I meant, like nobody in that talk, nobody wants sensuality. Even people who are full on of a view that sensuality is great and worth living for, they don't want it, that's why you go to it.
To try and satisfy.
To try to get rid of it, yeah. If sensuality is truly pleasant, there would be no desire in regard to it.
Or truly satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether it's Putujana or not, all is there is suffering and you acting out of it. So the people with wisdom are people who have recognized that certain way of acting out of suffering can possibly bring you closer to actually not suffer. Like sense restraint, mindfulness, non-distraction, non-ill will.
Yeah, the point is to, it doesn't matter where you are in the...
And even for an Arahant you can say, to an extent, that's why, I don't quite know in terms of Pali what terms she used for that, but even from an Arahant's point of view, it's not suffering anymore, but there is discomfort, there is disturbance.
It says dukkha.
Right. Yeah, usually dukkha was used for a non-Arahant. Because in other suttas and verses, when a monk becomes an Arahant, it would say, oh, holy life has been lived, I've done my tasks, so everything that should be abandoned has been abandoned. Whatever's left is basically nuisance and discomfort that can arise on account of this still living body.
Yeah, not dukkha.
Yeah, it's kind of a residue of an Arahant, which is a residue of having a living body, but when this body breaks down, breaks apart, there will be no more suffering left, so to speak. And it's that discomfort for an Arahant, discomfort of the living body, discomfort of the things arising, that is the whole world of suffering for Putujana. But it's rooted in the same. Body exposed to elements and these various things that come your way. So literally it's nothing, it's just a pile of aggregates called creature and discomfort manifested in them, enduring, ceasing, and so on. Now when Putujana is touched by that discomfort, he grieves, he suffers, he laments, and that's it dukkha for him. When Arahant is touched by that discomfort, there is no pain. But if you speak objectively, yeah, it's only dukkha that manifests within this thing that we call the creature. Because whatever's felt, it's already a discomfort. Because it's a pressure, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why for an Arahant, for him, his attitude is whatever's felt counts as suffering. That's why he stops feeling everything. So yeah, she probably wasn't an Arahant yet because Mara was still trying to find access to her. Because for an Arahant means basically Mara gave up on you.
But she was on the right direction.
Oh, she was virtually there. So thinking, like for example, creature is a useful reflection. Thinking of yourself as a creature first. Not I'm a creature because I am, but I am because I'm a creature. As the verse describes, you're a pile of aggregates. Pile of aggregates is called a creature. So when there is a presence of a pile, creature is there. And that none of that is the issue. The issue is then you developing the ownership in regard to that whole thing. Whether in regard to the pile of aggregates or in regard to the creature, either way you develop a sense of ownership. But if you contemplate that the necessary basis for any ownership, any sense of self, anything you feel, anything you crave on account of what you feel, the necessary basis for that is that this creature that I am is given. The pile of aggregates is given. That will basically contain any notion of self that you have. Even doesn't matter how independent you might feel, it will be seen as a inseparable, impossible to step outside of the container of the creature. That's why the sutta says, like for the future reappearances, for like in samsara, doesn't matter in what realm, for as long as there is craving there, the that whole
mistaken
notion of identity, ownership is there.
But whatever realm there is
a creature.
As
in there is always the five aggregates.
Or the point of view.
Creature is the name for the five aggregates, and the reason why I said it's good to use creature as contemplation, because you say five aggregates seems technical, seems theoretical, seems out there. Oh, these five components. If you say, oh, your sense of self, self-view, well, that's a bit too close to be seen, as in I am that sense of view. But using the term creature, it's kind of something you see that you are, but at the same time, the fact that you are a creature, you had no say in the way that creature manifested, in how that creature and you, how long that creature will be alive. So it kind of pertains to you, but it cannot be owned in the same sense. So if you develop a context that you are a creature, you're basically developing a context of certain unownability of your environment and your experience as a whole, of the five aggregates. You're developing a context of dispassion.
To this.
To experience. Whatever you can experience, yeah. Because passion comes from that self-centeredness, from assuming that your sense of self is independent of the creature or the five aggregates. But you are a creature first. Did you have say in it? Any say in it? How it manifests? What is its lifespan? No. So you just, any choices, decisions you make are on account that you are it. You are within it.
You are a being. Being. A human being, an animal being. But that's your point of view that's there. Point of view is there.
Point of view is the creature.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what realm, there's always a point of view in every realm.
Can you tell to that creature to not come anymore? Can you tell to that creature to disappear? Can you command it? Can you control it? Can you be the master of it? It's inconceivable. You're always the creature first. Any notion of mastery, ownership is within it. So that's what I mean, like it's not about denying your sense of self, it's about putting it in the right place.
So, point of view. Is there a separate point of view, a separate point of view that's independent of anything else? Can there be a point of view which doesn't view anything?
Impossible. It's inconceivable. Point of view is defined by things that are being viewed. So point of view is within the five aggregates. It's part of the five aggregates. Point of view.
It determines that.
That's why it's not about getting behind the point of view and entering, the supreme realm of Nibbana or something. It's about the choices you make on account of point of view and things that are being viewed. It's not about reaching the first point that would before which ignorance was not there. It's about not proliferating, not acting out of the unwholesome choices, not making the unwholesome actions based on unwholesome intentions that are fully within the point of view and what's being viewed, fully within the creature. That's what the practice is about. Mindfulness, responsibility for your actions, and sense restraint. All of that is secondary to the point of view. You can't step outside of the point of view and fix it, as make it right, because it's not a matter of choice. But you can stop proliferating things that are making it wrong, and that's how it becomes right, indirectly. So the same, you can't have a sense of self unless you're not already there as a creature. The way you have arisen, given to yourself to be owned, basically. So if you stop maintaining the ownership of the creature, you are automatically diminishing the self-view, the view of the point of view being independent of everything else, being the first.
Yeah, the origin.
Yeah, the origin of things that are being viewed.
So instead of everything's coming from me, I'm within that.
Well, I'm within whatever's presently enduring, in my experience. Whatever feelings presently enduring, whatever intentions are presently enduring.
That's I am not.
Yeah. So all you have to do then, so you have no say in arising of intentions, but then you realize, so you do have a say in choosing to entertain one type of intention on account of the other.
So sometimes who chooses?
Exactly. So that's basically what Mara asked, pretty much.
Who's choosing?
Yeah. The fact that you ask who means you assume there is a person independent of the choice who then makes a choice. No, person is the result of the choice. So who is choosing is wrong. You should say that who is there because of choosing. So when choosing ceases to be wrong, the who of the choice will also diminish. And then all you have is pile of determinations, as the verse says, pile of choices. But now, because you haven't been maintaining the notion of who through wrong choices, you get to see that it's only choices, not the who behind the choices.
So you're saying the choice chooses?
Well, that's true. That's correct to say in theory, but for Puthujjana that's not true. He chooses, and he is the result of what he chooses. So he needs to start choosing rightly first. That sense restraint, sila, virtue must come first. There is absolutely no Dhamma without it.
Intentions.
Yeah. So who chooses is simply a wrong question that is rooted in the wrong choices.
So what about free will? This term gets thrown around.
What about?
Like, who wills? Yeah, it's the same question.
Again, free will means choice.
Yeah.
So which is first? The whole question, who chooses, puts the notion of I am first. And that's a mistake. That's why it's a wrong question. You can still ask it. But the point is that who chooses means there is who first that then makes a choice. So I just need to find out who is that who. But that's a wrong order. It's the choice that comes first, sense of who is secondary to it. So then we realize the question of who chooses becomes unintelligible. Because choice comes first.
Choice is there.
Choice is there. That's why there is a sense of who in regard to it. Because choice is owned. You stop owning choice, the question of who subsides.
But then what stops a person from choosing bad things?
Previous choices. Bad choices are maintained through choosing badly. You stop choosing badly. That's what the Buddha meant by purifying your action beforehand. He said, the young man leaves their home out of faith, practices, dwells not welcoming sensuality, ill will, lives restrained, secluded. He gets to understand the Dhamma, he develops threefold knowledge, he frees himself because his actions have been purified beforehand. So that's what stops you from choosing bad, because you basically stop choosing bad. And choosing bad needs maintenance of choosing badly. Bad choices need to be there, maintained. Once you stop choosing badly, it will fade away. Same like any, you can see that in the on a worldly level, addictions. They're pressing you to choose them over and over again. But then when you free yourself from it, you can't choose it anymore. Because it's actually unpleasant, and now it's seen as unpleasant. But before that it was seen as pleasant. Drug addictions, any other substance, any form of addiction for that matter. Sensuality as an addiction. Same. But they said it's because you don't know it's painful, that's why you go to it. Like a man with a leprosy burning his skin with embers. It was always painful. It's just he thought it was pleasant. Once he sees that it's painful, he cannot possibly go back to it. That's why everything that is bad will be abandoned. Because everything that is bad requires that discrepancy of ignorance, requires its maintenance. Once you stop providing that, it will cease without a reminder. It cannot come back. You cannot choose badly again, because there is no more basis for bad choices. And basis for bad choices are bad choices that you stop engaging with now. Thus you remove the basis for it.
Because yes, people have fear that if I let go of my sense of self, then I'll just do whatever I do.
Well, that's because they haven't understood any of it. You can't let go of your sense of self as a matter of choice.
Yeah, no
if you're
responsibility.
fearing, if you're fearing that you will let go of your sense of self, you're taking that to be a sense of self.
Like if I let go of my responsibility for things.
Yeah. You can't let go of the responsibility. You can only deny it. The true letting go of responsibility is not a matter of choice. It's a matter of undoing the symptoms of it. That's it.
But responsibility remains.
Yeah. You just stop owning it. But the only way to stop owning your responsibility is to first accept it. Same. Responsibility is on the sense of self, as we spoke before. If you keep going around saying there is no self, well, how can you undo that mistake? So responsibility is the burden that needs to be rectified. Not through denying it, but basically going beyond it. You cannot go beyond your responsibility for as long as you're avoiding it. So first you have to accept responsibility. That's why the mundane right view has to come first. There is mother, there is father, there are results of my actions, as in there is the weight of my responsibility. If you go living your life, even if you're a Buddhist practitioner, denying that very basic recognition of responsibility for what you choose to do, what you choose to say, how you choose to live your life, what you choose to think, it's on you, fully. If you're refusing to accept that responsibility because it feels unpleasant, that weight, you're refusing to basically partake in the mundane right view. Good luck then developing the supramundane one. Impossible.
Yeah.
So the only way you can go beyond responsibility is through first fully accepting it and realizing there is no way out.
This creature
Is responsible for its actions.
Yeah.
Because this creature is not free from its actions. This creature is not an arahant.
This creature comes from mother and father.
Yeah.
How?
There is given, there is received,
Mm.
there is the unknown, the extents that I cannot fathom. You admit all of that as the arisen phenomenon. And then you get to see where the problem is correctly. Because the only reason people would deny their responsibility, people would deny their sense of self, is because it's unpleasant to admit it. That's it. So again, it's only suffering that arises and suffering that endures. And whatever you do is on account of that, avoiding it. So that's why, yeah, the creature is a good term to think about. As a necessary basis for your experience as a whole. Because the creature is the name for the five aggregates, as the verse says. Using the other Pali word pugala, individual, which was referred to, arahant as well, as we said, it's kind of it's sort of less practical. Because people already have lots of, I'm an individual, he's an individual, you're an individual. My individuality can kind of, through language, basically became appropriated. It doesn't mean the same thing anymore as pugala meant when the Buddha used it to describe arahant, Arya Savakas. But creature is something, creature. You just are a creature, exactly. And that's exactly what the five aggregates are. They just are. A pile of aggregates, just a heap. 5 heaps. They just are. You have no say in that. You cannot remove one, have the other one a bit more. You just simply have no say in that. It's inconceivable for you that you can alter or change their order or anything like that. And it's exactly the fact that you're a creature that's out of your hands. So not forgetting that in the practice of your mindfulness, that you're a creature first, creature in which creation you had no say in, yet now you're appropriating it. Is that the right thing to do? My sense of ownership of this is within this creature that's been like thrown at me, given to me, the way it is. So then my sense of ownership is not the ultimate owner of this, it's the result of it. So it's not the first, it's the second. That's how you undo the sense of I am. Not by denying it, but by saying, not I am. So, I am, not is first. So, not I am. Not is the first, mine is the second. Not like going around saying, not mine, not mine. That's when you're to say this, not, comma, I am.
I am the second.
Not I am. So you stop assuming I am stepping outside of that which is not yours. So not comes first. That which is not mine, that cannot be mine, that is unownable, that is inconceivable. And that's what the creature is. Clarify what the creature is, you will stop owning it. You will cease to be a person with personality view.